That's a pretty shade. Where is it? It's not really what I expected. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new then welcome. My name is Kristina, and on my channel we talk all things beauty from my own experiences. So before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave any comments that you have for me down below. Today we are going to be swatching and testing out the brand new Natasha Denona palette. This is her most recent launch. It comes with 5 different eyeshadows. I believe they're supposed to be cream to powder eyeshadows, as well as a blush duo and then a bronzer slash contour trio. We're going to be swatching all of these shades, and I'm also going to be putting every single one on my face today so we can kind of see what it looks like on me. Going over the specs very quickly, I purchased mine from Natasha Denona's website. I used a 15% off coupon. There are a ton of content creators that do have Natasha Denona affiliate codes, so I would definitely search those up. I can't remember whose code I used, but I definitely used somebody's. This retails for $62, definitely more on the expensive side, but there was something that really called out to me about this palette, specifically the eyeshadows, because the eyeshadows are marketed to be sort of like a one and done type of eyeshadow, each on their own, or you can mix and match all of them to create a full-on look. Recently I did post my favorite one and done eyeshadows. I love a good one and done eyeshadow look, something quick, something easy, something that will stay all day. So, of course, when I saw this, I was like, wait, that looks like an incredible palette. And then we get a contour bronzer and we get blushes here as like an added bonus. I thought that it would be something that was really worthwhile to check out. I do own one other Natasha Denona palette, but honestly, I don't really reach for it that much. I'm not quite sure why, because when I have used it, it has been beautiful. But I guess I've just really been loving my natural makeup looks, and I haven't really reached for it too much, but hopefully this one will kind of call to me a little bit more. It says that this is supposed to be more of a no makeup palette, which I love. We have the shade Everyday, Dreamy, Statement, Soft, and Casual. These look like they're just regular powder eyeshadows, but I was under the impression that they were creams. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go ahead and swatch them though. Yeah, they definitely feel like a powder shadow. Ooh, look at that pigmentation. That is beautiful. Okay. So this is the shade Everyday. Okay, that's a pretty good swatch. At first I was like, oh, it's not really swatching, but then I realized that it was catching the light and it kind of looked invisible on my arm here. That tone right there already looks like one of my types of everyday shadows. This one is described as a medium light brown. I think it's beautiful. It has a really nice shift, but it also isn't too much. Like, it's not too metallic. Now let's feel the shade Dreamy. Ooh, that is going to give you that wet eyelid effect for sure. This is described as a sparkling wet effect nude champagne. Ugh, look at that. That's beautiful. I think it's gonna be very, very wearable for medium skin tones such as mine, but of course we will see. We never really know until it's actually on the eyes. Now we have the shade Statement. Statement is a medium dark brown. It kind of looks like a purpley dark brown. Ooh, that's pretty. How rich is that? Ooh, yummy. That is beautiful. I would say it's not as metallic as Everyday, which is really nice because I feel like this will give you a really beautiful smoky eye look if you want to use this as your one and done eyeshadow without it coming off as too metallic-y, too bold. Now we have the shade Soft, which is a rosy vintage peach shade. This one I'm not too sure about. I don't typically wear pinky peaches alone. Ooh, but that's pretty. I love that finish. It almost looks a little bit silvery metallic here. Let's see how it swatches. All right, that one is super pretty. I don't know what that's gonna look like on my eyelids just alone. I feel like maybe it'll be too peachy by itself, but again, we never know until it's on the eyes. And then lastly, we have the shade Casual, which is a silk satin taupe. That's a little bit more gunmetal than what I would usually go for on an everyday basis. Ooh, but that is rich. So I think that Casual and Statement do have similar finishes, while Soft and Everyday are a little bit more similar, but I do think that Soft has a little bit more of a light refraction type of shimmer to it. And this one right here in Dreamy definitely is its own unique like wet lid effect. I like that we have this option in this palette because currently I feel like that's such a popular type of effect on the lids, but also if you're not into just a wet lid effect, this one can probably top any of these and still look really gorgeous, give you a completely different eye look. But these look super, super promising. I'm excited for that. Should we go ahead and swatch the blushes as well? So we have a regular pink shade as described and then a coral pink shade. Ooh, this feels nice and creamy. That feels really buttery. Those are beautiful. There is the light pink and then here is that pinky coral. I'm very curious to see what they look like mixed together. So let's mix the swatch here. Here is that shade. Okay. That's actually really nice. So you do see a little bit more of that light pink right here at the beginning of the swatch, but I'm sure if you blend it out with a brush, it's going to give you more of an even pigmentation. This medium tone pink, I think, is more up my alley if any of these three were going to be on my cheeks, you know? And then I'm running out of room here, but we'll go ahead and swatch all of the bronzers here. So for me, I would consider these different contour shades, but maybe mixed together it'll look like more of a bronzer. These feel exactly like the blush. I'm not crazy about how tiny each one is, so if you were to use them individually, you'd probably have to go in with a really small brush. But I'm thinking for me, I will probably be mixing them anyways. So there's the light, the medium, and the dark. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that. Like we did with the blush, let's go ahead and mix them all together. There you go. And because this does come in 3 different shades, you could mix just the light and the medium or the medium dark or the light and the dark together. So you have more options, but here is all 3 mixed. This part of my arm is a little bit darker than here. So let me do that again. I do like the way that these feel a lot. Okay, there you go. You can kind of see it right there. But here are what all of the colors look like. Eyeshadow does tend to crease on me no matter what, so I don't really take the chance without eyeshadow primer. This is just the Rare Beauty one. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's actually do the blush and bronzer first before we do that. I'm going to take this BK Beauty 112 brush. It's just this small angled brush, and I'm going to mix together all of the bronzer and contour shades like we did on the arm. There is a bit of fallout here, but honestly, it's not too bad. Like you see a little bit right there. I feel like these are pressed pretty nicely. Okay, that's kind of more significant. Just gonna, tap my brush off. It's a lot. And for this, I'm just going to pat it all over. Maybe I should have gone in with a bigger brush. I was actually going to use this for contour. Yeah, let me use a bigger brush. Okay, I'm actually going to use this BK 107 brush, and we're going to use this to mix all of the shades together because this is going to be more like my bronzer color. And then maybe later we will do the dark shade just as a contour. But I want to lay down the bronzer first. I did already do all of my base makeup, and I also set my face with powder because I didn't want the powder in this palette to go on top of like a liquid foundation. Ooh, I'm not crazy about the mirror in this. It almost feels like it's kind of warped in a way. Like it kind of looks like it's zoomed in or like fisheye sort of. If I have the option though, I don't really like using mirrors in palettes. These definitely seem more like contour colors versus a bronzer color like mixed together, which makes sense because all of them seem to be more cool and neutral in tone. So they are gonna give you more of that contour shade even if you mix it together. I do like to bronze up my face with an actual like warm bronzer to begin with though, but of course that is just my preference. And now I'm gonna take that BK Beauty 112 brush and only use that dark shade, I think, and I'm gonna use that to further contour like my jawline and a little bit in the hollows of my cheek just to see how much contouring we can get out of this. I definitely think a little brush like this is ideal because you're able to like really get in there and get just specifically that powder. And I'm going to mix both the darker and the medium tone for the hollows of my cheek here. That's actually quite pigmented and very nice. It's blending out really evenly, which I really like. I think mixing the dark and the medium tone is a lot better for my skin tone, because I think the light one is lightening the entire overall bronze contour effect a little too much for my liking. So I think I'll just stick to the medium and dark tone here. That actually blends so nicely. You guys know my gripe with typical bronzers and contours. When it comes to powder ones, I just always get really blotchy down here. For some reason, my skin just doesn't want to hold on to powder products there. But with that considered, this is actually blending so beautifully. And I think for the full effect, we'll go ahead and contour my nose a little bit. And I'm just going to take that middle shade, I think, and just this eyeshadow brush, like a blending brush. And I'm going to lightly contour the nose. I like that middle shade as a contour because I feel like I can really build it in there without getting nervous about it being too much or getting muddy. I'm sure I could go in with the dark shade as well if I wanted something a little bit more intense, but honestly, this is pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with this contour here. And I don't contour my nose often, so if it looks pretty crazy or like not blended well, I'm sorry. Oh, I like that. I do like that. And I'm just gonna take a clean brush and kind of blend the center, which will ultimately blend out the edges of that contour as well. There you go. Okay, that's pretty nice. So now I'm going to be taking both of the blushes. I'm just going to mix them together, and I'm using this Rephr 104 brush. Either it's because these pans are a little bit larger than the bronzer and contour, or maybe like they are pressed differently, but I'm getting a little bit more fallout from the blushes than I was with the bronzer and contour shades. So be careful about that. Make sure that you kind of like tap off the excess on your brush before going in on your face if you don't want to get like too much pigmentation at one time. So I'm just going to tap this in closer to my temple and kind of upwards. That's really pretty, and I feel like it's a bit more buildable than I anticipated. Like it's going on a little bit more sheer at the beginning, which I love because I find that it's easy for me to go overboard with powder blush. So with it being a little bit more buildable, it gives me more control for sure. That's a pretty shade. I kind of wish that we had a little bit of a shimmery blush just because I feel like matte blushes on me just look so flat, you know? So I think I'm actually going to add a little bit of a highlight on top of that. I'm going to use this Makeup Revolution highlight in the shade Pink Seduction because I want to keep it kind of in the same shade family so it doesn't change it too much. But I'm just going to kind of put this all over that blush. Just a really light dusting. This is really pigmented, like very, very strong. Okay, there we go. Those are the bronzers and the blushes on the face. I think it looks pretty nice. I like the bronzer contour a lot. I like the versatility that I have with it. And I do like the blushes. Pinks are not typically like my forte, but having the ability to kind of mix them really helps me out. Okay, so now let's go in with the eyeshadows. I am going to do the eyeshadows separately because my thought process in purchasing this palette was that I was going to use the eyeshadows alone as one and done eyeshadows as they're marketed. And typically with powder eyeshadows, I do like to go in with my finger and tap it in there, and then I'll further blend it out with a brush. I just have like a blending brush right here. This is a MAC 217 brush, and I'll probably grab like clean brushes throughout the video, but I'm just gonna go down the line and we're gonna test all of these out. Starting with the shade Everyday. This honestly looks like an everyday shade for me. I think that the eyeshadows are pressed a lot harder. Either that or they really are creams. I can't really tell. They feel like powder to me. Where is it? That's really sheer. So I feel like I have a pretty good swatch on my finger, but it's kind of hard to get it onto the eyelid. Let me get some more here. So starting off with that. You have to like really swipe it on there. Maybe if I use a brush, I'll get more pigmentation. I'm gonna pack it in there. So I think that did give me a little bit more pigmentation. Being able to kind of like scratch at the surface of the eyeshadow and get it on that brush and then tap it in, I think is giving me better application. I'm not getting as much of that shimmery metallic look as I want because I'm having to like really blend it in there, and I'm losing that finish along the way, which kind of sucks because I really like that finish. Okay, now let me try to go in with my finger. I'm pressing down really hard into the pan. So there it is. All right, maybe I just had to get through like that hard film. There wasn't even a hard film though, which is interesting to me. You know how sometimes eyeshadows can get a little bit of a tough film and you have to like scratch through it? I didn't think that was the case with this, but I don't know. All right, here is the shade Everyday. It was a little harder to get onto the eyelids than I anticipated. We'll see how these apply with the fingers and with the brush throughout. I really thought that it was just gonna apply normal with just my fingertip, but I don't know. But with that aside, this color, beautiful. This looks like the type of bronzy brown shade that I would wear on an everyday basis. Just swipe this onto the eyes, put a little mascara, maybe some eyeliner, and then I'm good to go. All right, now let's go in with Dreamy. I am going to try again and do this with my finger. So we have it right there on my ring finger. And then I'm just going to dab that on. Ooh, yeah, that's way more pigmented than the shade Everyday. But it might also be because it's mainly like shimmer and glitter on there. Who knows? That is so pretty. It is a little bit light for me to consider this like a wet eyelid. Actually, no. In the viewfinder, it does kind of look like I have a wet eyelid, doesn't it? It's a little bit light, like just a hint light. I'm actually going to take this same brush that we used for my contour, and I'm going to take that middle shade right there in that trio and kind of work it into my crease. Maybe that'll help make it look a little more natural. Ooh, I like that a lot. Yeah, that's really, really pretty. So it's definitely glittery, shimmery, a little bit more shimmer than glitter actually. And the glitter is a little subdued. So it doesn't look like bang in your face. It looks like kind of a natural sheen. So as I'm moving my head back and forth right here, you're just catching a little bit of that light on the eyeshadow. So that's what's giving it that wet eyelid effect, which I really enjoy. This is probably something I would wear with just mascara or maybe mascara and eyeliner. But here are the first two shades in Everyday and Dreamy. All right, wipe those off and I applied more eyeshadow primer. Now let's go in with the shade Statement on the eye, starting off with my fingertip again. I just really want to make the fingertip work, you know? Okay, so I feel like that was a little more pigmented. I did take a lot more on my fingertip, I will say. So I think you have to start off with more product than you think. And taking this clean brush, and I'm just going to blend out these edges here. They do blend out really easily though. I am losing a good amount of that finish again as I blend it out. It kind of just turns into more of that flat color versus being that shine, like that sheen right there, you know? So I think once you blend it, you definitely have to build the color back up to get that finish. This definitely is like a one and done smoky eye in my opinion. I think it's a beautiful darker brown shade where it gives you that smoke and it's not too dark to where it just looks like you have a black eye, you know? And I think having more of that satin sheen to it helps give it more dimension than just a flat matte brown. All right, there is the shade Statement. Really, really pretty. And again, I think this works by itself. It's a little bit more difficult than what I anticipate using it with like a crease shade would be. Maybe use a quick crease color, like maybe you could use one of the bronzer contour shades again. But overall, a really beautiful smoky look, for sure a statement eyeshadow. And then let's go in with the shade Soft right here. It's that peachy color. And you can kind of see as I'm like putting my finger in there how creamy these eyeshadows look. I think they're a powder. I can't even tell. It's so funny that I can't tell if they're a cream or a powder. You can kind of see it all like mushing together and becoming one, looking like how a cream eyeshadow looks. Like, you know, the ColourPop Super Shock shadows, as you kind of use them and use your finger with them, they sort of melt together and they lose that embossing in it. That's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting from these eyeshadows. Just gonna stick this on the eye. Ooh, that's so pretty. Gonna blend it out a little bit with this clean blending brush. I think the satin sheen to this is really nice and it's making it look a little bit more wearable because as I'm turning my head, I'm catching a glimpse of almost like a silvery type of sheen to the eyes. I kind of take back what I said about it being possibly not a wearable like peachy shade. I almost feel like with a brown eyeliner and mascara, this would look so beautiful, so wearable. Definitely a really pretty one and done eyeshadow. I think if you're more pale than I am though, this would look a little bit deeper, which may be a little bit more wearable to where you can just put mascara and be done with it. I don't know if it'll be my first pick for an everyday eyeshadow look, to be honest, but I do think that it would still look really, really pretty alone. Maybe just like on the inner third as almost like a highlight eyeshadow type of deal. So here are the shades Statement and Soft on the eyelids. And lastly, let's go in with the shade Casual all over the eyes. So I think going in to the actual eyeshadow with this fluffy blender brush to further like blend the color out, like adding color as I'm blending it, has given me a really beautiful, really flawless blend. So I think that's the way to go. Like if you want to initially apply it with your fingers and then take like a more fluffy brush. I was originally going in with something like this, more of a dense flat brush versus this one right here. This one's a little fluffier. I think the fluffiness really helps to kind of like scratch the surface of the eyeshadow and then give you a little bit more eyeshadow on the brush, you know? I think that's the way to go. Even just initially applying it with a more fluffy blending brush. All right, here is what the shade Casual looks like on me. Definitely a beautiful taupey shade. A little bit darker and smokier than what I typically would go for an everyday type of eyeshadow. But again, as a one and done eyeshadow, it is a good one because as you move your head back and forth, you are getting a lot of dimension with it. Just out of curiosity, let's add the shade Dreamy to the inner corners here just to give it a little bit of sparkle. All right, I just finished my makeup here. I just added some mascara and a little bit of the Casual shade under my eyes, and I did not realize that I didn't do my eyebrows. I just had some brow gel through it and I didn't like fill them in. So I just filled them in, but this is what the finished face is looking like. So let's talk a little bit about this palette. It's not really what I expected, and it's not my favorite. Like I said, to give this disclaimer, I only own one other Natasha Denona palette, so that's like my only jumping off point. And from what I can tell, I feel like those eyeshadows are a lot more pigmented than these. Again, I think that it may be kind of that creamy, powdery formulation to it that makes it a little bit more sheer when going on the eyes, which isn't a terrible thing because if you're looking at this as a no makeup eyeshadow palette, it's very good in that sense because it gives you really nice washes of color. It's not too much, and you can kind of use this palette without thinking about it, without thinking I have to be really careful, I'm gonna get way too much pigmentation if I like rub my finger in there and just swipe it on, you know? Maybe her approach to this was to give you a little bit more of a sheer formulation when it came to eyeshadows, especially because we have like two of these darker shades which are supposed to be standalone one and done eyeshadows. So of course you don't want something that's going to be difficult to blend or something that's going to be too much pigmentation, you know what I mean? I think my favorite shade when it comes to shade as well as like the way that it applies is the Dreamy shade, this more glittery shade. I think it applies really nicely and it looks really beautiful, and out of all of these shades I think it's probably going to be the most versatile because you can top it on top of any of these eyeshadows as well as use it with other palettes or other eyeshadows outside of this one. I do really like the lighter shades, but I could probably do without these two darker shades. That's just my personal preference though. I'm not typically the type of person to use dark eyeshadows alone or just even in general. I don't really do darker, smokier looks. I like more bright eyeshadow looks these days. So for me, if she had added like a copper shade or maybe even another shade like this one, if we got more of a taupey sparkle or a gold sparkle, that would be nice. But I can see the idea of where this was going. So I think the actual idea behind the palette is really nice, and having all of these shades does cater to a lot more people than just like me, you know? I do like the blushes, but again, I would probably prefer something that's a little bit more satiny, a little bit more glowy. I would just call this a contour though. I do like this. I like the fact that you can mix them, you can mix and match them, you can use them separately. They are pretty small, but if you're using it as a contour, you don't really need to go in with a giant brush anyways, because typically typically with contours, you are kind of pinpointing where you want to contour. Overall, I think it's a really good thought out palette. Is this going to be the type of palette that I reach for every single day? No, probably not. Maybe if she came out with like a volume 2 where the blush is more of a peachy or maybe even more of a mauve tone, and then she came out with like warmer one and done eyeshadows that are more geared towards brown tones, you know what I mean? Maybe that would be more my vibe. From everything I've heard from you guys and the types of things you like when it comes to makeup, I could see a lot of people really enjoying this palette. I do think this caters to a lot of people. For $62 though, for myself, I don't think it's worth it just because, again, I don't know if I'm going to be reaching for this palette that often, but I do think as a one and done, just reach for this type of palette. It's a really good thought out color story. Okay guys, that's my full review on this brand new Natasha Denona palette. If you did pick up this palette, let me know your thoughts on it. And if you have more experience with Natasha Denona eyeshadows and complexion products, please let me know in the comments down below if maybe I did something wrong or if I could use something better. Maybe, I don't know, I should have used it in a different order or use different tools. Just let me know in the comments down below because I would love to get the most out of this palette as I can. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!